Hello everybody, Carl here, and welcome to the ToyWiz Store Twitch channel. So, in case you haven't been watching any of these before, I have been painting a number of miniatures, and for about a week and change now, I've been working on this, the Bad Moon Loonshrine. It's a terrain piece from Warhammer's Age of Sigmar, which is their fantasy game, and it was given to me as a Christmas present by my good buddy and co-worker, Lewis. So, as you can see, it's a rather large piece, and it's taken me quite a bit longer than I was anticipating to get this, even this much done. And I only have 3 colors on it. Well, 2.5 maybe. The 2 browns are pretty similar. So I'm going to jump right on back into this. Please feel free to comment in the chat. I will be happy to reply to you, most likely vocally here as opposed to typing in the chat there. And yeah. So last time I left off, I actually ended up stopping the stream last week a little bit early because I wasn't feeling very well. And I was using the Sigor Brown to take care of the little horn on the end here that the cages are dangling from. The cages I had done previously in the Wildwood Brown, which is what I did the base rock with. I also am using the Sigor Brown on these little round bits of fungus that are all over the place. So I managed to wrap up the ones on the moon on top here, but I still have quite a few little round pieces to take care of down here on the base. So we're going to start off with that, and then I'm going to move on to the Basilicanum Gray and start working on some of the metal pieces here. So yeah, here we go. And we will likely not be getting any interruptions from Kitty or Puppy today, because I actually have closed them out of my bedroom, because God love him, Vivi just cannot stop jumping up on my desk when I'm trying to paint, and while he is adorable, definitely don't want to get any of this paint on his beautiful black fur. But who knows, maybe when I wrap things up, I'll bring him back onto the stream a little bit just to say hi. Kitty does love being the center of attention. Now, it might be a little difficult to see. You know what? I completely forgot to turn my light on. Here we go. Even with the light on, it might be a little bit difficult to see, but there is a difference very slightly in the colors between the Wildwood and the Sigor Brown. The Sigor Brown has a little bit more of a reddish tint to it, which is extremely subtle, but should pop up a lot more nicely when I finally get onto the contrast. Sorry, these are the contrast. When I get onto the layers on top of the contrast paints. And that is when this stuff's really going to start standing out. Unfortunately, before we get to that part, we got to do the somewhat less interesting part of getting the base coats down. But as they say, and as I have said multiple times over the past week and change since I started this one, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And by the time this is all said and done, this should be really nice. In the upper left-hand corner of the screen, I have an image of a more professionally completed version of the piece, so you'll see what I'm attempting to build towards. Right now the moons are a little more on the greenish side because of the shade that I used, the Griff Charger Gray, which I really like both of the grays I've been using from the Citadel contrast paint line, because they work very well for a variety of different uses. The Griff Charger, as you can see, has a bit of a green tint to it, which I think works really nicely when dealing with more natural grays, because it kind of imparts a sense of like there being some like lichen or moss in there. And so that's why I've used it for the natural stone of the moons here. I've also used them for the base when I did Molig a couple weeks back, as well as the stone pillars for the 2 other units I did from the Molig's Mob set. Again, it might be a little difficult to see, so I don't know if the camera can quite pick it up. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. You might be able to see that the difference between the Cygor brown and the Wildwood there. Now, using the contrast paints in general is a little on the tricky side. They are really nice because they do provide a way to almost kind of cheat the whole painting process. Because, and again, if you've watched any of my streams before, I know you've heard this. If you haven't, though, this is for you. The whole point of the contrast paints is that they're a lot thinner, and when they pool, they dry a lot darker. In general, they dry a lot darker, but the overall amount of paint that's there does create a significant contrast, hence the name. It enables you to kind of get a lot of the layer and shade effects without actually using layer and shade paints. Now, what makes this tricky, well, at the same time, I mean, it's part of the same reason that it makes it a lot easier to get these really nice effects, but the trickiness is that you have to kind of approach the way you paint these from a much different direction. So whereas with the regular acrylic paint, it's, well, just, compare it to regular acrylic paints. You put them on there, you see the effect immediately. With the contrasts, it's a lot more like using watercolors. And you have to be a lot more cognizant of how and where you're pushing the paints to achieve the proper pooling effects. So if you're used to doing regular acrylic miniature painting, or regular acrylic painting in general, it might take you a while to kind of get used to just how different the contrast paints are. But once you get the hang of it, you're able to get a lot more detailed effects in a lot less time. While it still may not bring your stuff quite up to the level of the pros, and that just, will take so much time and practice. It'll still give you a really nice result. And all of I should clarify, almost all of the painting I've done on this channel has been with the contrast paints, with exceptions made for the metallic paints that I used on the Katan Shard of the Void Dragon, because they don't have any metallic contrast paints. I am hesitant to use the term yet, because I don't know whether or not they're working on any. It would be really cool if they do at some point. But yeah, I had to use the metallic ones for that, and I did use some of the layers and the shades to really make that one pop a bit more. Because that one, I mean, even more so than a lot of these other pieces I've done. I mean, and again, I never want to do a poor job with any of these by any stretch of the imagination. But that piece in particular I was extremely fond of, and I really wanted to make sure I got that one right. And the same thing goes for this piece. Because as I've mentioned before in this channel, but not yet today, so again, if you've been following us for a bit, apologies for having heard this already. But this piece is one that I've been looking at for a few years now. When it first came into the store, I want to say probably about 2.5 years back. But don't quote me on that. I thought it looked amazing, but I just couldn't bring myself to pick it up. At the time, I hadn't gotten back into miniatures painting. It had been, since I was I think 16 was the last time that I had done any miniatures painting. And I'm not going to tell you how old I am now, because I've been enjoying quite a bit lately that people seem to think I'm a lot younger than I am. And I do not want to shatter that mystique. But let's just say it's been a while since the last time I had painted. But then at the beginning of 2020, when I ended up picking up the Corvus Cabal from Warcry, Not necessarily because I was planning on playing the game, but just because I thought they looked really cool. And it would be nice to have a bunch of, muscular, shirtless men sitting around on my desk. But yeah, I started picking up mostly just figures, because even though I wasn't planning on playing any of the games specifically, if I ever wanted to get into them, that was going to be the more important thing, to have actual units to play with, as opposed to terrain, which would still just look amazing. And so over the course of the next several months, I ended up picking up other pieces. I grabbed Molig's Mob because the Spite Shroom was adorable, because it's an angry mushroom with its head exploding. I picked up Caven Shrike because he was a really cute emo guy in power armor. And I picked up the Thousand Suns Start Collecting set. So this way, if I do want to start playing a game of 40k, I'd have something to do. Actually, everything that I'm painting here, Flame Wolf, is actually my own personal property. I bought all these for my own collection, but I am using the store's paints, and I did obviously buy all the stuff from our store. Yeah, I've been sharing it with everybody through the store's channel because I'm in charge of I'm the social media liaison for the store, as it were, and B, because I figured this would be something kind of cool to do. I'd started off doing this on Facebook, through Facebook Live, for a bunch of our miniatures players, because it was like we had a lot of content, on our on YouTube, on Facebook, for like the card games or the sports card collectors. But we really didn't have anything for the miniatures gamers, and they really are a huge part of our community, and probably some of the most dedicated members of our store's community. So I thought, what? I have these, these figures. I've started, kind of getting back into the painting. Let me start streaming this, so we'll have some content for the miniatures guys. And then after a bit, I'm like, let me try to grow the audience a bit more. And I moved off of Facebook Live onto Twitch. And I've started doing additional things as well. On this past Tuesday, we did a lecture about DC's Future State event, where I talked about the events at DC leading up to the creation of the event, and the stories that are coming once it is wrapped up at the end of February. I'm also going to be putting some streaming of some Magic the Gathering Arena up here. My plan is to do a little lesson on how to draft, and then play through a little bit so people can see just how poorly I managed to get stuff put together. I have assembled some of the store stuff though too. A couple of, and this was again back when I was on Facebook, and I didn't do it here on Twitch, but I did assemble a small chibi Gundam model live on stream one day. So we are working on expanding our content, and I do have some pretty good plans for some new material coming up. In addition to my how to draft Magic the Gathering tutorial, I do plan on putting together some videos with the help of my associates on how to get into the various hobbies. So if you want to start playing Magic the Gathering, what's the best way to do it? If you want to start playing Yu-Gi-Oh, what's the best way to do it? If you want to start collecting sports cards, what the heck's the difference between a mosaic and a prism? Things like that. So hopefully you all will enjoy that as well. Okay, I got that side done. Now I've got to wrap up this side with the fungus, and then I can start moving on to the metallics. And actually, you'll note that as I'm doing this, I do have a tendency to occasionally lose my train of thought. Quite a bit back, I did mention the two different types of grays that I use, and how I like the way that both of them really turn out and with different effects here. And the whereas the Griffcharger Gray gives you that natural greenish gray, the Basilicanum Gray gives a more like worked look to it. So I've been using that for some of the weapons on the Corvus Cabal warriors, and I'm going to be using that for the metal bits on this piece. In fact, let me just wrap up this little cluster of fungus here, and I will show you guys a wonderful example of the difference between the Griffcharger Gray and the Basilicanum Gray. There we go. Let me just try to get a point back on this brush again, and I'm going to bring out Katan Shrike. Shift the Moonshrine over for a second. So if you notice on Katan Shrike here, the base that he's standing on I did in the Griffcharger Gray, but the little bits of metal coming out of there I did with the Basilicanum Gray. So even just from the front here you can see a difference between the way the shades work out. If you look around on the back, it's even more highlighted by that little metal panel there that's around like the window slit you can shoot out of if you were hiding behind it. So nice effects there. Also the weaponry is all done in the Basilicanum Gray as well. Okay, let's get back to the shrine. As always, if any of you watching have any questions, feel free to comment in the Twitch chat. I'll be happy to answer. If you're watching this on one of our replays on either for the couple weeks after I do this live here on Twitch, or if you watch over on YouTube or on Facebook, feel free to comment or shoot a message to the store, and I'll be happy to answer to the best of my ability. If it's not something I know the answer to, then I can certainly defer to Lewis. He's our main miniatures guy, and he is a bit more talented at this stuff than I am. So I can certainly get an answer from him if need be. But my talents certainly lead a bit more to showmanship, hence why I am doing this. There we go. Okay, not too many more it looks like. I should also mention, which you've probably kind of figured out by now, but even though the contrast paints do a lot of the contrast work themselves, hence the name, you can still use them in conjunction with the layers and the shades. For example, when I did the Katan Shard of the Void Dragon a few weeks back, while I did use the contrast paints for the purple stone that he was on, and the electricity around him, I then used some layers to kind of go in and really make them pop. So the electricity, the darker purple electricity, was popping a bit more with a lighter purple that was put on it to give a bit more of a lighting effect on it. And I did put a very, very slightly lighter purple. It was still pretty dark though over the Shaiish, which was the contrast color. But I did put a slightly lighter purple over the stones as well to really sell that, and the overall effect once it was done was nothing short of astonishing, if I may toot my own horn for a little bit. It's not like it was going to stop me from tooting my own horn, because I'm the one on microphone. Okay, I think that might actually be it for those little bits of fungus on the side there. Okay, nice. Finally getting some more visual progress being made. Okay, so that was the Sigor Brown. Next, we're going to move on to the Basilicanum Gray so I can get to the metal bits that are on here. So we're going to clean off the brush. What I do is I bring Rocket in here a little bit more. I try to kind of roll the brush along the side of the mug in the water there for two reasons. Number one, to help push some of the excess paint that's in there out, and number two, to help try to maintain the point on the end of it, which has been getting a little frayed from the little poking I've been doing here and there on the deeper bits on this piece. As you can see there, probably gonna have to get a new brush soon. But thankfully all this stuff's nice and big, so don't need to worry about that too much. So yeah, next up we're going to be using Basilicanum Gray because we've got these little metal bits that are riveted onto the side of the stone. We have these chains here that are holding the two moonstones together, and we also have the little bits of metal on the cages. So I think we're going to hit that next. So we'll shake that up nicely. Make sure any sediment has moved on into the rest of the paint nicely, so we have a solid base there. And we can continue using the regular base coat brush. I used the really big one when I was doing the bigger parts there, but I think from now, for the rest of this, I'm going to be sticking to the regular base coat brush. Okay. Start from the top, I'm going to work my way down. Now, as you can see there, Basilicanum Gray does apply very light. But much like with a lot of the other contrast paints, a little dab will do you, because this will dry a lot darker than it looks. And you'll also notice that where it's getting into the little bits inside the chains, in between the links, it's already a lot darker. And that right there is the magic of the contrast paints. Giving you that detailed bits without having to go back in later on with some shade. And the paint does dry relatively quickly, but the full effect of the contrast does take a bit more time to really show up. So like a number of the pieces that I've painted, I've looked at them as soon as I'm done, and it's like, it's all right, I suppose. And I look at it an hour later, I'm like, okay, it looks a little bit later. I look at it an hour later still, and it's like, okay, wow, that changed immeasurably. Actually, it probably is measurable, but I'll use my own metaphors and descriptions, thank you very much. And as I'm doing this, I guess I'll take a little time to give a couple shout outs. First up, as always, I mentioned him before, Lewis. He is our miniatures guy at the store. He does all the ordering for all this stuff. He's on top of the ball of all of the various miniatures games we carry, whether it's Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, Star Wars Legion, Star Wars Armada, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Going back to GW Warcry, which was where we got the Corvus Cabal guys that have done in the past on this channel. So yeah, any miniatures questions you have, Lewis is absolutely the man to talk to. I also want to give a shout out to JD, the store supervisor, because he was nice enough to, after finding out that I had purchased the Canite Canite Shadow something. I'm forgetting the name on it. But I had picked up the set of that for Warcry because I thought they looked really cool. And upon telling him this, he mentioned that he had picked up the starter set that they were part of because he had wanted the other half of it. And so he was nice enough to just flat out give me the Canite Shadow Stalkers. Shadow Stalkers, that's the word I was looking for. And so as soon as I find some bases for those, I will be assembling them on this channel and painting them. So big thanks to JD for that. I also want to give a shout out to Dr. Red MD. He is a good buddy of mine. He was the roommate of my best friend for a while, and he's been giving me a ton of help with this Twitch channel. He doesn't appear to be here at the moment, but he usually watches the streams. He grabs clips for me. Puts in a lot of, seems to give me a lot of help with nothing in returns, except for me occasionally, plugging him in his channel. So he's usually streaming during the week on dr_red_md. And if you're a fan of Fallout 76, that's primarily what he's been streaming. I know he's been playing Cyberpunk 2077 lately, but I don't know if he's actually put any of those on his stream yet. Also going to give a shout out to my best friend who goes by Fate here on Twitch. That's F8_GG. He normally streams a Battle Royale game called Super Animal Royale. In fact, he's running a tournament today, as I don't know if you've noticed in the chat I was discussing with Flame Wolf earlier. So at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, if you'd like to watch a full tournament of a bunch of cutesy animal characters blowing each other up, that's a good place to go for that. Provided, of course, that I'm done with this stream, because I don't want to be sending you away from my channel, but if you do happen to go over there, tell Fate that I said hi. There we go. Oh, well, good description. Well, of course, I am the master of amazing descriptions. You should check out my the newsletters I send out for my comic readers. And yes, in addition to being the social media guru, master of ceremonies, however you'd like to describe it, I am the comic guy for ToyWiz. So if you have any comic book questions, please feel free to ask. Well, that's quite alright, Flame Wolf. I mean, no one is as amazing as I am. Or as humble. You see, when you throw enough self-deprecating humor out there, people start to think you're joking when you start going a bit narcissistic. But I know the truth. Is it a joke? Is it real? Maybe I'm born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. Well, yes, Flame Wolf, I definitely want to also give a shout out to you. Thank you very much for joining us today and chatting. It's nice to have some discussion going on. Helps out when I'm trying to think of content, so as people are watching, they're not just listening to this really nice background music supplied by purpleplanet.com. Actually, going back to the shoutouts, just because, why not? Always great to have active viewers. That is true. I'm also going to give a shout out to Everyone's Rancor, who very valuable stream. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're loving it. I hope you can, tune in again whenever I do future ones. But no, thanks to Everyone's Rancor. He's one of my comic guys, also one of my magic guys, as far as our customers go. And he's the one who finally brought us up to 50 followers. So pretty soon we'll be setting things up so we're going to officially be Twitch affiliates. Everyone's Rancor is also a huge fan of Tonberries, which are my favorite monsters in the Final Fantasy games because they are adorable. I even have a Tonberry mask, and I have a Tonberry tattoo on my leg, which perhaps I will show you at the end of the stream, if I remember. Okay, well, I got the rivets that are holding the horn on there. Let's see. This is going to be a little bit tougher. Let me do this next before moving on to the other rivets. This is going to be a little tougher because these cages are on... They do dangle. So, got to get the metal bits of the cages done, while hopefully not having them bounce around too much. And wow, I completely missed the side of this one here. You know what? Got a bunch of dark colors together. I'm just going to go entirely Basilicanum Gray on the part I missed before. Because even though I went primarily brown, they don't necessarily have to be wooden cages. They can be, metal ones that are just, rusted, or I guess oxidized is just a simile for rusted, but not simile, synonym for rusted, but same general point. Besides, I'm going to be going over these a lot more later with some layers to really bring them out. So, nobody needs to know they made a mistake there. And as I am so fond of quoting him, in the words of the late, always great Robert Ross, we don't make mistakes, we just have happy little accidents. And actually, Flame Wolf, I'll mention this. I'll direct this at you, but obviously this goes to anybody. But to my good friend Fate, I actually had shown him the other day. I found an article about how there is a Bob Ross museum in Muncie, Indiana. And over the summer, I think, hopefully once things cool down a bit with the pandemic, I plan on going out there to visit it. Because I was a huge fan of Bob Ross when I was a kid, and still now, because he was just amazing. He was just friendly and caring, and yeah, from what I understand, a bit of a perfectionist behind the scenes, but you can't expect everybody to be 100% calm and friendly and nice 100% of the time. And he did so much for so many people, just in terms of, teaching and just being a nice calming presence, a little spot of, joy and happiness. And he was very much an inspiration to me. Back when I was in high school, my friends and I were done with class, we would, head back to my place and play some Magic the Gathering and have Bob Ross playing in the background. So imagine my delight when, just before Christmas, Wizards of the Coast announced they were doing a secret lair drop with basic lands for Magic the Gathering with Bob Ross's artwork on them. And so I immediately ordered 2 of them, both the regular version and the foil version. But any of you tuning in who are not currently following the channel, please click that little heart button and follow us. It's a great, free and easy way to support us. Helps us continue to get more content out there. Helps you to know when we have stuff going on here, whether it's my weekly painting streams or if it's my monthly comic discussions or any of the other material that I have plans for with over the course of this year. And if you're already following us, thank you very much. I do appreciate it wholeheartedly. I suppose it might be a nice time to give another shout out, which may be a little against my own self-interest because he's currently streaming now similar content on a different channel, but a couple of weeks ago, the Miniatures Den was nice enough to raid here with the viewers from his channel, and a few of them, started following us, which was wonderful and just so nice of him to do. So a nice big shout out and a thank you to the Miniatures Den. Feel free to check his channel out when I'm not on, because his work really puts mine to shame. He's also a big fan of alpacas. But yeah, it actually turned out that one of his subscribers is also in the New York area and not too far from the store, so he's planning on stopping by someday to check out what we've got. So that was really nice of him. Oops. I should probably make sure I'm doing this on the camera, not just holding it up so I can see it. Would know the first thing about miniatures painting or painting in general. It definitely seemed practiced. Well, thank you very much, Flame Wolf. That's very kind of you. It's, like I said before, it's something I have done in the past, but the contrast paints here definitely added a new dimension to things. And for the most part, I'm fairly happy with most of the ways that a lot of the stuff I've been doing has been coming out. Some things less so, like the couple weeks back, actually was in I think it was on Thanksgiving when I did a bonus stream and I was painting Sabine Wren from, or Sabine Wren, I'm not sure how you pronounce her name, from Star Wars Legion for our painting contest at the store. And, the following week we had open voting for all of the... Uh-oh, looks like we've got a... So we have a spammer in the chat. Let's see. How do I go on to getting rid of that? Ah, there we are. Okay, see, still learning things here. What was I saying? Oh yes, so I painted the Sabine Wren on the channel. Wasn't overly thrilled with the way that the figure came out, but the following week we had our official voting, and I'm proud to say that I came in second to last in the number of votes in that contest. So Yeah, there are quite a few people out there that are a lot more skilled at this than I am. But and that's why one of the reasons I keep doing this, partially to improve my technique and just keep getting better. The more you do this, the better you get at it. Nice and simple. Just like with everything in life, practice makes perfect. Or if not necessarily perfect, then, you know, some degree of improvement, as long as you're willing to learn from your happy accidents. And yeah, like I said from the beginning, I wasn't overly thrilled with the way Sabine came out myself, so at least I didn't come in completely last. Although I probably would have, had there not been extenuating circumstances. I won't go into any more specifics on that. But I will say I did not unduly influence anybody's voting. I came in second to last, fair and square. Well, maybe one person. I know that one of my comic club members who watches the channel, and if you're watching this right now, Raj, hello, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. But I know that he voted for me, so I got some points there. I will say, if we had a contest where we could just submit anything we had done, I absolutely would have put in my Katan Shard of the Void Dragon, because that one I am so proud of. I mean, that was a figure I was, like, ridiculously excited for from the announcement, and I really am happy with the way that it ended up coming out. You can find some really beautiful still pictures I took of it up on our Twitter page, which is twitter.com/ToyWizStore. Or if you follow on Facebook, facebook.com/ToyWizCollectibles. And as soon as I'm done with this little metal bit on his chin, I think I'll bring the Katan Shard down here and show him off in this stream too. Oops, did a little bit on the stone there, but not overly concerned. Pull a little off with my thumb there. Okay. You know what? I lied. I'm going to finish off the rest of these bars, then I'll bring the Katan Shard of the Void Dragon out. Just because this is going nice and quickly. I don't see the need to interrupt in the middle of a color. Now, if this is one of the larger pieces, like when it took me literally 3 hours to just do the Griffcharger Gray and the Wildwood, that would be a different matter, but because now I'm on to the smaller pieces, absolutely wrap them up before moving on. If you go back and take a look at the video I had done of just assembling this thing, you'd see that even just, you know, gluing together the different pieces was quite a bit of work. This is such a big and detailed piece. But that's part of what I loved about it. And again, I cannot thank Lewis enough for getting this for me for Christmas. It was very nice of him. Even though I've been dropping sledgehammer to the face subtle hints for about a couple years now. It's nice that somebody did get it for me, which was just lovely. And he repaid my subtlety in kind with some subtlety of his own the day he gave me the present. Going on about how, oh, so now that you're done with Malu's Mob, you definitely have to get the Bad Moon Loonshrine. So the Bad Moon Loonshrine, you totally have to get it now, right? And then I noticed it wasn't on the shelf anymore, and then he gave me the present that night. I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I know what's in this thing. So on Christmas morning, we're going to do a bonus stream, and I'm going to open it up right there on camera for all of Switch to see. And sure enough, it was this bad boy. And I put them together that day. Okay, that is it for the Basilicanum Gray. Just pop the cap back on that. Shift that over to the side for a bit. Just wash off the brush. Again, like I said, definitely want to make sure when you're cleaning the brush that you press it up against the side and give it a little spin to both push the excess paint out and to try to keep the point on the brush as, you know, present as possible. Okay, now while I'm letting that dry, next we move on to the Apothecary White, which we're really not going to see too much of an effect with, but I want to use that for the bases of the mushrooms, so this is what I'm going to be using quite a bit. And I'm going to be, I want to do this one next, because these little bits here, I'm going to be doing purple on top of them, so I want to make sure I have the base white prepared beforehand. So while I'm having the white dry, which is going to take a little bit, I'll be moving on to other things like Skeleton Horde, which I'll be using for the skulls that you may be able to see. Yeah, the skulls there and bones right on the ground. And I'll move on to the Blood Angel's Red for the flatter mushrooms. I've got some Warp Lightning that I'm going to be using for the eyes. And then once all that is done, I'll be moving back to the Malgos Purple for the mushroom caps. And maybe I'll do the flatter, see, like the flat ones with like the little bumps on them there, I'm going to be doing in the red, but the flat ones over here, I think I'm going to be using the Shaiish Purple. So these pointy ones will be the Malgos Purple, these flatter ones will be the Shaiish Purple, and then these ones that are flat but with the bumps are going to be Blood Angel's Red. But before I get to that, I did promise a Katan Shard of the Void Dragon, so let's bring him down, shall we? Like I said, this is the one that I am by far the proudest of. And I put a lot of work into this one, and I think it really paid off. The official paint job on it has green for the stones and kind of a light green for the electricity and whatnot. But because I'm a huge fan of purple, I decided I was going to go with the Shaiish Purple, which is very dark purple for the stones. And I put, I believe it was Xerius Purple as a layer on top of it. So, I don't know if you can, let's bring this up a little bit more so you can see. Actually, right there, you can really see the difference between the Shaiish and the Xerius Purple. But I also have little hints of it here and there to really kind of make it shine. And then with the Volupus Pink, or Volupus Pink, which is what I used for the electricity here, as well as combining it with the metallic paints to give the effects on the tail and the spear tip there. I then used, I believe it was Fulgrim Pink, to highlight it and really make it look like there's some light electrical effects going on there. So yeah, this is by far the piece I'm most proud of. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's put him back up on my desk so he can watch me as I'm doing my work on the Moonshrine here. Well, thank you, Flame Wolf. I'm glad you like it. Okay. On to the Apothecary White. Let's see. I just realized I probably should have brought the box out so I can... Yep. These little bits in here are also white in the official artwork, so I think I'll be doing those a bit as well. And like I said, you're not going to see too much of an effect with this because it is a very thin white going over the gray sear that I used to prime this. That's one of those things that, you know, it'll be more visible in time. I'm also going to put a little on the upper parts of the mushroom too, just so we can see a little bit more of an effect when I add the Magos purple to it afterwards. In fact, I just realized if I'm just going to be coating these, maybe I should use a larger brush for them. But no, I don't want to go too crazy. Oh yeah, there's definitely a reason why the Katan Shard of the Void Dragon is the piece I'm most proud of. And hopefully, when I am done with the Bad Moon Loonshrine here, this one will also end up falling into that category. I remember when I first started this, I was thinking, okay, well, this will take me a couple of streams, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3. Definitely not doing this in one, but this is probably going to be a full month-long project. But you know what? I am totally down for it because this piece is gorgeous. And absolutely should be given all the time it needs to really make it shine. And you may notice that even though I am painting white here, it is still getting into the little cracks here and darkening, and so giving us that little extra effect that the contrast paint is so good at. That's something that will continue to stand out even as I put additional paints over them. Let's see, let's do these over here on the smaller moon's chin. One thing that was really throwing me when I was putting the browns on before, and by before I mean last Saturday, is that the ropes that are holding the cage, not the cages, the horn to the stone have knots on top of them, understandably. I mean, they're ropes, they're going to have knots. But they look just like they could have been more mushrooms. That was kind of throwing me as far as, well, do I paint these brown, or do I, give them a little, white stems and then add some other stuff to them later? And eventually I realized, okay, they actually are, knots. And so I just painted them brown. And then when I get to the layers on a future stream, which maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks from now, because there is, like I said, a lot of stuff to cover here. But then I'll add some other lighter browns on top to really make sure that it's visible as rope and not just smears of brown. Oops. Just got a little of the white on the cage. Now, thankfully, since it is a lighter color and a very thin paint, I can just kind of wick that on off. Okay, I wonder if I should try to get in a little bit on the flatter pieces. So this way when I get to the Shaiish purple, it'll tone it down a little bit because it is a very dark shade. Not to mention kind of accenting the little recesses in different ways. Okay. Now, if I was doing this on top of Wraithbone primer, you'd probably be noticing a little bit more of a difference with the variations in the different whites. But since I'm doing this over Gray Seer, which is a lot darker, you're not really going to be getting quite that effect here. But you will notice in the little indentations that it is drawing a bit grayer. And again, that is absolutely the whole point of these contrast paints, to get those effects in those recesses. So that's why I am taking all this time to add some white paint to all these. Again, these are things that will be noticeable at a different time. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? Because I've got so many other mushrooms to do, and they're a bit bigger than the ones I just took care of on the... Oh, I just realized I think I missed the ones that are on top of the... Did I? Yeah, I think I did miss these up top here. Let me just give them a quick pass. I think I'm going to break out the larger brush to take care of the rest of the mushrooms. Once I've just double-checked to make sure. I got these ones up top here all right. I think I did, but... definitely want to make absolutely sure. Okay. Oh, you know what? Let's do the other one with the base brush. On the inner part of the cave here, we have these weird funguses that are just kind of dipping down. So let's go in there and give them a little pass. And these are going to get some of the purple also. Maybe the lower bits I'll leave white, or whitish gray as it were. But the upper bits up against the stone, I'll probably do with the Shaiish purple. yeah, I'm not going to worry too much about the back sides because it's just A, impossible to reach, and B, you're never going to see them. I want to give them at least a little attempt because I am very particular. Okay. So let's wash off and then dry off the base coat brush, which we will be coming back to again. I think now I'm going to grab my medium dry brush, which can absolutely be used for other things as well. Heck, like I mentioned before, it's what I used for the main big parts of this guy. And we're going to use this to coat the rest of the other mushrooms. Again, because this is a very thin white paint, I'm not going to be doing too much with it. Or rather, I'm not, overly concerned about the, detail on this because it's not particularly visible, but it is kind of important to get in those little bits here and there. So we'll see more of the effect later on when I put some other paints on top of it. Yep, and I just put way too much on there. Hey, Dr. Red, how's it going? Thank you for joining us as always. Things are going fairly well. Just talking about you earlier and plugging your channel. Mentioning all the wonderful assistance you've been giving me lately. And I am certainly feeling better than I did last week, although I still haven't completely kicked this cold. Ran over to Barnes & Noble this morning to pick up a manga that I absolutely would have picked up from the store, except my distributor doesn't have it in stock. So if any of you who are watching this are ever looking for any comics or trade paperbacks, with the comics is a bit tougher because, being a periodical and they're always, putting new issues out every month, they don't keep a big stock of things. They only print to order, and those orders go in 2 months in advance, which really gets a lot of fun when something suddenly gets really big and it's too late to get it. But the trade paperbacks and manga stay in print, so if you need anything like that, let me know and I'll be happy to special order anything for you. If you need suggestions or advice, I'm also happy to help on that front as well. Definitely put a little too much contrast paint on these mushrooms on the side here, but like I said before, it's easy enough. I can wick it off and use it on these other mushrooms. So what's new in the world of Fallout 76, Dr. Rad? I know you've been... well, nothing, honestly. Well, gee, thank you so much for helping to keep the conversation going. That was a huge assist there. Same old grind. Okay, well, how about this then? How has Stream Raiders been treating you? RNG is hard. Oh god, yeah, that's... RNG is always the bane of any gamer's existence. Sucks when you have the skill to do something and you keep, you know, accomplishing things over and over again, but what determines your drop is just a roll of the dice. Let me expound a bit. By all means, please expound a bit. Just so our viewers can, you know, get some opinions from somebody other than me for a little bit. Layer after layer? Oh. RNGception. I'm intrigued. Because I am a big fan of Christopher Nolan. Absolutely loved his Batman v Wolverine movie, aka The Prestige. Can't trade new items from the latest content up. Huh. Now that's interesting. Is that to discourage players with more time from, you know, kind of trying to take advantage of people who they're completely locked behind RNG? Is it because they're trying to discourage people from taking advantage of people that don't have the time to really put into the grinds, or? So I can, you know, kind of see a rationale for it. I mean, I've seen it plenty in Knots Combat Dupers. Okay, fair enough. And I've seen similar systems in MMOs. Like I used to play Final Fantasy XIV a lot, and a lot of the equipment. And it was all mostly, you know, cosmetic stuff, but you could only, you know, acquire a certain number of the tokens to trade in for them on a daily or weekly basis, depending on what type of token it was. I'm assuming duplicators implies some people using some sort of glitch or cheat to get items that they, or additional copies of items that they shouldn't. Yep. Score one for the big brain on Carl. RMT, real money traders? See, I know some of the lingo. Okay, making good progress now. Well, another thing I'm planning on doing with this channel at some point, and I've mentioned it before, and I'm going to mention it again, now that we're at, 50 followers. Once we get to 100 followers, we can start doing stream raiders, which I think will be a nice little fun thing for everybody watching. For those of you who are unfamiliar with stream raiders, it's a game where a streamer will set up different, strategy-type battles, and the viewers will have half an hour to place units. Each viewer can place one unit every 5 minutes. And then once the 30 minutes is up, the battle will start at the discretion of the streamer. And the units will act all on their own. And if you place them properly and place the right ones, you win the bout. You get some in-game currency, which you can then use to get better units. It's a fun little thing. I've played it quite a bit myself on Fate's channel, on Dr. Red's channel. And it's absolutely something I'd love to bring here. So if you're here, please tell your friends to start following us also. We're halfway there. Okay, that covers all of the Apothecary White. So let's clean off this brush. And while I'm preparing my next color, which is going to be Skeleton Horde, I guess I'll start discussing another comic that I like. So I just recently picked up the trade paperback for a book called Die. Well, if it's just the third trade paperback for a book called Die. The book's been around for a little bit now. And it's written by Kieran Gillen with... I can't express to you just how gorgeous the artwork is by Stephanie Hans. She is just one of the best talents in comics today. And the theme of the book, to put it at its most basic, think the old 80s/90s Dungeons and Dragons cartoon meets Stephen King's It. So you have these 6 teenagers back in the mid to late 90s who get together for the 16th birthday party of one of them, and he introduces them to a brand new role-playing game called Die, which is, conveniently enough, also the name of the book. It is also, conveniently enough, the name of a full RPG that Kieran Gillen wrote, so you can actually read Die and then play the actual game that they played. Anyway, as they start playing Die, they all vanish. And they return quite some time later. I can't remember if it's 2 weeks or 2 years, but they were gone for a not insignificant amount of time, and everyone realized, definitely enough to be noticeable. And when they came back, one of them was missing, specifically the one whose birthday it was, who introduced them all to Die. And one of them is missing an arm, and none of them is able to talk about where they were or what happened. So we flash forward from mid-90s, late 90s, up to 2018, and at the 40th birthday of one of the friends, he finds a glowing 20-sided die. And upon bringing it to the attention of the rest of their friends who had survived the experience, they all find themselves pulled into the world of the game, which is where they were when they vanished the first time around. And they weren't able to speak about it because they were under a geisha that prevented them from speaking about their experiences. But now they were back in the world of Die, they could, talk about it again and try to find their missing friend and try to get out. Except it turns out that their friend is now the ruler of Die, and he's set up another game that he wants to play with his friends. And it gets just more and more complex from there as, Gillen really has just a phenomenal grasp on characterizations and toying with expectations. You see characters doing things that a real person in that situation might end up doing. It's not like one of those, you're watching a movie and it's like, oh, come on, nobody in their right mind would do this. Or why don't they just do this, insert horrible, horrible thing that would get them out of the problem, but, only a sociopath would do. And then you find out what happens if they actually do those things and the actual consequences that come from them. Additionally, this being Kieran Gillen, there's also a lot of rather progressive material in there. A lot of musings on gender identity and whatnot. For all that it's an ensemble piece, not necessarily you can't really call them a main character because there are the group of 5 really are all main characters, but there's one that really does kind of stand out from all the others, who was, particularly close with the GM, and he was playing a female character in the game, and while in the world of Die, he is a woman, and while he is ostensibly straight in the quote-unquote real world, he finds himself romantically involved with a number of men in the world of Die, who respond to him as, the woman that she is there. So you get some interesting, commentary there, and general musings that you wouldn't necessarily think to expect in a fantasy horror matchup. Now, I'm going to, show this or pull this up to the camera a little bit closer a little bit later on, but the Skeleton Horde is one of my favorite of the contrast paints. Not because necessarily I like the color, I mean it works well for its purposes, but in general I do tend to like, purples and, dark blues as opposed to yellowish browns. But I think it's the color that, or the paint specifically, that best really shows what the contrast paints are capable of, because the dirty yellow bone look gets really dark when it pools, and so has a really just gorgeous effect on hollowed eye sockets of skulls. And I usually use this with a Wraithbone White undercoat, but with the gray sear that I primed this with, we're getting even, darker, more worn and really twisted bone. And as long as I'm making sure that it's pooling very nicely in those eye sockets, it really stands out. And in between the ribs here, I'm going a little heavy on it here because I do want those deeper spots to really stand out. Again, I'll try to hold this up to the camera a little bit better once I'm done with this poor unfortunate soul in the cage here, who's been here long enough that he now has mushrooms growing on him. So you can see exactly what I mean. But, let me quickly go back to Dai, or more specifically to Kieran Gillen himself, because, and since this is a Warhammer piece I am doing, it behooves me to mention that Kieran Gillen is responsible for Marvel's current Warhammer initiative. Now they have the license from Games Workshop, which previously had been held first by Boom Studios and then by, I'm blanking on them, Titan Publishing. Marvel now has the license to it, and Kieran Gillen, who has been a player of Warhammer games since the 80s, is in charge now of doing the Warhammer comics for Marvel. He's currently writing just one mini-series, a 5-issue mini focusing on the history of the character Marneus Calgar from Warhammer 40k. But they will be expanding upon that in the future, and additional books will be made, and while they may not be written by him specifically, he's going to be overseeing the line, so he'll be kind of plotting out the general direction for every other writer who's going to be doing Warhammer books for Marvel in the future. So the license in general is in very good hands, not just because Gillen is a very, very talented writer, but because he is a fan who really gets the lore. Okay. So I still have some more skulls to get to on the base, but before I do that I want to show you a little bit closer how the skeleton in the cage looks, so you can see what I meant when going on about the skeleton horde paint. So take a look at that. The in between the ribs, that's not that deep. It's fairly shallow, but because the paint really had time to pool in there, it looks a lot darker. Same thing with the spots in between the arms, the bones in the arm, and even in between his fingers and in between his toes. So that is the magic of the contrast paints. Okay. Let me just get a little bit more on his side there. And I'm going to take care of the skulls on the ground before moving on to one of the other more colorful paints to start working on the tops of the mushrooms. Actually, I think maybe what I'll do next before I even get to that is I'll do the eyes and the warp lightning. So this way I can give the Apothecary White a little more time to dry before I start putting the other colors on top of it. There we go. Seriously, this skeleton bone is by far the most is the best way to show exactly what the contrast paints are capable of. Alrighty. Now, because I already did the base here in the wildwood, I don't need to worry as much if I get a little of the skeleton horde onto it. It's one of the nice things about doing the darker colors first. Although one of the downsides to doing the darker colors first is that if you kind of make a little mistake and get a little too much of it on different places, you're not going to be able to cover it up as easily. Because lighter colors will still have dark marks where the darker colors end up, or where the darker colors were before you painted over them. Now, another thing you can do when you're using contrast paints, which I'm not doing here, is they have something called contrast medium, which actually thins the contrast paints out even more. So if you have one that, is particularly dark, but you don't want quite that effect, you can use the contrast medium to thin it out and get a different shade of that color. So if you want your skulls to be a little less yellow with the skeleton horde, you know, dilute it on a 1-to-1 basis with a contrast medium. Or if your Shaiish purple is a little too dark for your taste, but you happen to like the... In fact, it's a bit more of a bluish purple as opposed to a reddish purple, add a little contrast medium and lighten it up a little bit, while maintaining the same color balance. Okay, let's look back at the fellows up in the cages. The full skeleton looks pretty good, and I just put a little more on his arm there. And get a little more in the back of the skull in the other cage. There we go. And yeah, I know that, you know, by putting more on here, it's going to dry even darker than this, but I don't mind that. I want these to be really... I want the skeletons and the bones in general to be pretty dark. And in part because I can also go back over a little bit more later on with the layers and put some lighter layers on there just to make different parts stand out a bit more. But as far as the contrast base, I want them to be a nice, you know, dark, creepy, dirty bone look. Like, these bones haven't been bleaching out in the desert sun. They've been in this miry, mucky cave, constantly in the shadow of this giant stone carving. And I really want to make sure that the coloring here emphasizes that. Okay. I think that about covers the bones. So next up, I'm going to move over to the Warp Lightning and use that for the eyeballs on the 2 different moons. And then I'm going to move on to the 2 purples and the red to take care of the mushrooms. But before I do that, if, my dear viewers, I can beg your indulgence for just a moment, since I've been at this for about an hour and a half now, I'm going to take a quick moment to go and grab myself something to drink. So please feel free to talk amongst yourselves. If you're watching a replay on this, feel free to skip ahead a little bit, but I'll be back shortly. Thank you very much. And I am back. Thank you very much for sticking with me. I got my drink, and I am ready to resume painting. So let me get to it. So the next one I'm not really doing too much with. It's the Warp Lightning, and I'm using this for the eyes on the moons, which later on I will also be adding some more detail to. The official artwork has some really cool spiraling thing going with some lighter greens, so hopefully I'll be able to hit something of some pretty good quality with that. We'll see how steady my hands are. But for now, I'm just going to put the bigger green on here. And just get in there just like that. Now, the Warp Lightning is a very bright green, which I can actually, well, I mean, you can see from here, but I've used this as the bases for a couple of the members of Mollog's Mob, including the Spite Shroom, which is that adorable exploding mushroom I mentioned earlier. Even though for the most part the Mollog's Mob is in caves, and I did use the Griff Charger Gray for the base when I did Mollog themselves. I did decide that I wanted more of an outdoorsy, you know, forest floor feel for the other pieces. Even though there are very clearly stalagmites in both of them. And here you can see, you know, one of the difficulties of using the contrast paints is that the brush strokes are very noticeable. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on and be careful of when you're painting with them. And try to maintain a consistency in the direction you're going so it doesn't look too chaotic. Smaller eye on the smaller moon, which, you know, I'm going to come back to that with this smaller brush too, because the eyes are a little on the small side. I don't want to get too much of the warp lightning on the stone. Okay, let's wash that off. And I'm going to bring out the detail brush. Just get a tiny bit in there. I said I definitely don't want to go too crazy and end up with this green all over the place even where it's not supposed to be. And I'm just going to go back to the base coat brush again for a little bit. Just put another little layer on the other eye to try to cover up some of those brush strokes. Did that a little bit on the side that's facing towards my monitor already. Just going to hit up the other side a little bit. Just give it a little more. Not too much. Okay, nice and easy. Now then, mushrooms. So, what mushrooms do we want to do first? I've got 3 different colors we're going to be using. So I think I'm going to start with the color I've never used before. I actually just purchased last week for this. And that's the Magos purple. Normally I use the Shaiish purple, which is a very dark one. This one appears to be quite a bit lighter. So let's shake it up nicely, so you can see it's, you know, considerably darker at the bottom. So let's get all that mixed together nicely. And I'm going to use this for the pointier mushrooms with the stalks. The Blood Angel's Red I'll be using for the flatter mushrooms with the stalks. And then the ones that are just completely flat, I'm going to be using the Shaiish purple on them. So we get a couple different colors going on there. And I'm going to be using the base coat brush for this. Alrighty, let's see how this looks. That's interesting. Now it is on top of a darker primer, so it's going to turn out a bit darker, but it's coming out very light in these initial coats. Again, I'm going to be adding, layers and whatnot to this again later on. And this does dry dark, so definitely things to keep in mind as I'm going over these. I'm just going to go a very light pass to begin with, and as I move on to the others and this dries and I see exactly how dark it dries, I can always come back to them later on and put some more on there. This also is a much more reddish purple than the Shaiish, which, in addition to being dark, is a lot bluer. It's not quite as red as the Volupus pink or Volupus pink, however it's pronounced. I still haven't figured that out. I should probably ask Lewis about that. I suppose theoretically I could also ask Google, but I think I'll bother Lewis instead. A little too much there, I think, but like I said before, I can certainly still go through and kind of wick it off and bring it onto the other mushrooms, so not the end of the world. And it's something to keep in mind when you're doing yours as well at home. Just unless some alien species has descended from on high and told you that unless you paint something well, they will literally end the world, no need to be assigning apocalyptic results to the outcome of your painting. Yeah, those are pretty cool. Definitely can't wait to see how those look once they dry up a little bit more and darken further. Okay, and we have some little pokey ones over here. remember, when you're painting with the contrast paints, you want to try to move in the direction that you want the paints to pool. So if you see a specific crevice you're trying to get to, move the brush towards it to make sure that that's where the paint ends up most. Now with these, I'm just trying to give a kind of fairly even coat to them. So that's why I'm kind of wicking the paint upwards. Or you can do paint downwards on them, you can paint around, whatever is comfortable for you, and see what works. Again, if I can quote or at least paraphrase the great Bob Ross, this is your world. You're the creator. Find freedom on the miniature. Incidentally, there is a great YouTube video out there where somebody had auto-tuned some of Bob Ross's sayings and made a whole song out of it. Don't remember the title off the top of my head, but if you do a search for like Bob Ross song or Bob Ross auto-tune, you can probably find it. I believe, every day's a good day when you paint. I believe, it'll bring a lot of good thoughts to your heart. Didn't properly warm up my voice before beginning today, so Dr. Ed, do not grab a clip of that, or there will be angry consequences. I do have a tendency to sing much better when I'm not all nasally and mucusy. It was at that point, while turning things around, that Carl remembered that he also has to hit all of those mushrooms on the bottom. And his heart sank just a little bit. Okay, I'll save those flat ones for the red. I think might come back a little bit more to touch up these ones on top a little bit. It is very light. Okay, now for these other large ones. Let's get to work. So the other ones that are on the face still. I'll get to them. I'll get to them. I haven't forgotten. No, I can't say that I ever have played Warhammer Vermintide 2. Is it strategy-oriented, or is it more of a first-person shooter? I know that some of the Warhammer games they've put out have been more shooters as opposed to actually capturing the strategic elements of the game itself. First-person more melee-oriented. That's pretty cool. I do enjoy a good melee game. My favorite genres are, JRPGs and action adventures, usually third person. Like, I am a huge fan of the Dark Souls series. And I love Metroidvanias. If it's in perfectly Warhammer stuff you're doing here, well, maybe I'll look into it then. Be another fun little thing I can start streaming. I do plan on popping back on here this evening and doing a little Magic Arena, so we have some additional content on that front. But maybe I'll do that, this evening as opposed to this afternoon. Oh, goodness gracious. Like I said before, I'm definitely feeling a lot better than I did last week. But this cold is still here, and it is still doing a number on my nose. So, probably not going to finish with the contrast today, but I've certainly made some significant headway on these. Both with wrapping up the Cygor brown on the other fungi, and with getting all these other colors wrapped up. But we'll see how things go. Still got a lot of these guys to do in the Mongoose purple before I even start thinking about whether I want to bother with the Blood Angels red or the Shaiish purple today. Whew. This is a very nice shade of purple. I mean, I like the Shaiish better, but it's still pretty cool. So I think I'm going to have to give it 2 coats to really get what I want out of it. Because the Gray Seer is a little too prevalent still. Now granted, I am going to be adding some layers on top of this, but still I think I'm going to want a little bit of a darker base to put those on. This is certainly looking a lot better than it was when I started this today. You know, while we're on the subject of other games, though, might as well talk a little bit about some of the other games I've been playing lately. So, what I'm going to say is my game of the year from 2020 was probably Hades. It's a phenomenal, top-down action-adventure roguelike in which you're playing as the son of the Greek god of the dead, Hades, trying to escape and visit the surface world. And it's got a great storyline to it that actually, employs the whole idea of, death and rebirth over and over again. So the repeatedly dying as you're trying to escape and having everything all rearranged when you try to make your next run is an integral part of the story and, works beautifully from that angle. And while the storyline isn't going to be of any surprise to anybody who's even mildly versed in Greek mythology, it's still very well written, and the dialogue is great, the characters are wonderful and a lot of fun. I've also been playing 20XX lately. It's a roguelike Mega Man clone with randomized stages and randomized order in which you can tackle the different stages. And it has daily challenges where everyone who participates in the daily challenge stage will be facing off against the exact same layout for the stages and order of the enemies. So you can play through and test your score against other people around the world. So that one's a lot of fun. Also recently picked up Octopath Traveler and World of Final Fantasy, both of which are entertaining JRPGs. Octopath in particular, very much a throwback to Final Fantasy VI in particular. I know that's what the creative team said they were, considering it a spiritual successor to, and 6 was my favorite of the Final Fantasies, so very much enjoying that one. And it was my good buddy Fate who had picked it up for me for Christmas, so another shout out to him. And I haven't had a chance to play too much of it yet, but I also picked up Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, number 2. I had kickstarted the original Bloodstained game back when Koji Igarashi had launched it some years back, and I played the full game for that on the PS4. But they also made 2 side games with the subtitle Curse of the Moon. I believe Ritual of the Night was the subtitle for the main game, whereas the Curse of the Moon games are designed to be throwbacks to NES Castlevania games, where it's stage oriented, but you can get multiple characters you can switch between. Whereas the main game, Ritual of the Night, from that Kickstarter, is more of a flat-out Metroidvania, whereas, Iga refers to it an Igavania, since he was the one who brought the Metroid formula to Castlevania with Symphony of the Night. And I think officially I'm going to state right now that I am going to wrap up today's stream with this first layer of the Magos Purple. Just because my eyes are starting to get a little tired. I still have quite a bit more to go, so don't worry, I'm not going anywhere just yet. But just to give you a general idea of where this is going to be heading for now. And I'll pick it up maybe tomorrow if I'm feeling it. Otherwise next Saturday, with putting a second coat on the Magos Purple and moving on to the other contrast paints for the fungi, the Shaiish Purple and the Blood Angels Red. But as I said before, definitely making some pretty solid progress here. This is a big piece. And one that's very worth taking the time to do right. You can definitely see it's gotten a bit darker in the spots where the Apothecary White has pooled, and that's helping to give it a little extra texture to the Magos Purple I'm putting on top of it, which is exactly why I did it that way earlier. So you see, there is a method to my madness. Almost grabbed the paint instead of my bottle there. Definitely would not have been a good thing to drink. Definitely gonna have to do a second coat on these. Alrighty. And I've got a couple little ones up in the top, so let me just dance the brush a little bit on these guys up here. Just so we can get a little bit of color among the gray. Don't want to go too crazy with it. And again, I can always add additional layers later if need be. Plus, at some point in the unforeseen future, we are going to be going back and hitting these all with layers to some other colors going as well. just realized I think there's another little bone in there that those mushrooms are growing on. So, I think once I'm done with the Magos Purple, and before I wrap up for the day, I'm just going to go in with the base coat brush and put a little of the skeleton horde on that last little bit in the cage. Those are the flatter ones. Here's another pointy one. Alrighty, I think I'm almost there. Just gonna get a couple more of these little pointy fungi down here. And we'll save the rest for the Shaiish purple. And And I think that'll do it for the Magos Purple for now. Like I said, I'm going to be going back and doing another coat to get it a little darker, but we'll see exactly what happens once it fully ends up drying. It certainly looks a lot darker on the camera than it does in person. But again, we're going to wait and see how things go. So, before I wrap things up for today, since I've been sitting here for quite a bit and need to stretch my legs and my back a little bit, let's go in and just take care of that last one there. That's looks like a leg bone that I missed right next to the skull in the cage that doesn't have the full skeleton in it. We'll pop that on open. And yeah, we'll use the base coat brush. That should be fine. Maybe I should grab the magnifier, but nope, definitely missed a little bit with the Magos Purple there. That's definitely some mushrooms there on top of the skull that I didn't get the backs of, only the fronts. So we're going to go back in with the detail brush, wrap that up, and then we might be done for the day. See, I always keep finding more stuff I have to get to. It never ends. Up, and I just found some more parts over on the side here I have to hit up also. Okay. And yep, one last mushroom head down on this side. Let's get back over to the base coat brush for that one. But again, this is why we take our time when doing it, so we can always go back and catch those little pieces we didn't know that we had missed. Okay, I think that might be it for now. I've got a bunch of other red ones to get to soon. Like I said, I'm going to do a second coat of the Magos Purple once this is dried. Do I want to continue now? You know what? Maybe I'll do that. See, I just can't help myself. I'm going to switch over to the Blood Angels Red. I'm going to do the flattened mushrooms now. Not the, sorry, the flattened ones with stalks. And again, I might need to do a second coat, so best to at least get a first coat done now, and then I can go back later on and apply the second coat once it's dried next time. Okay, so I guess we'll begin on the top here. And that really stands out among the other mushrooms. I'm only doing the tops. I'm going to leave the bottoms in the darker elements of the Apothecary White. Hey, Minecraft Noob 38, how's it going? Yeah, I've got plenty of painting to be done. So I'm making considerably more progress now on the Bad Moon Loonshrine with the contrast paints. Which is probably going to take me one more stream to finish. But then after that, I'm going to be adding on some layers to really make this sizzle and pop. Oh, you just got some paint? Nice. You said you were going to be working on some of the Lizardmen for Warhammer, right? I forgot the official name. Yeah, it definitely looks like I'm not going to be needing a second coat for the Blood Angels Red. Have you actually started painting any of those Lizardmen yet, or just worked on getting the proper shades you needed so far? Oh, you did the big lizard. Nice. Okay. I just realized I got a couple other of the Magos purple mushrooms that I completely missed. That's a good thing I didn't stop when I said I was going to. It's hard to paint. It is, they can be. I haven't seen the big lizard yet, but I can imagine, just based on the stuff I've been working on so far, I mean, GW is ridiculously detailed with their models, and there are so many little nooks and crannies you gotta get to. I got plenty of those on this one that are, you know, driving me crazy. But even when I was assembling the Ahriman from the 1000 Suns Start Collecting Kit, also available as an individual miniature and at the store. Plug. I'm looking at it, I'm like, this thing is going to be such a mess to do. Oh yeah, scales not pleasant. But you know, once you get it the way you need it to, I bet it's going to look glorious. You just got to be patient and not beat yourself up too much if it doesn't quite work out the way you wanted it to. Take your time. Take a break when you need to, because that's something that usually ends up tripping me up, because after a while, like, my eyes will start getting tired and I'll start missing little things here and there. Oh, you're too new. Well, you know, everyone's a noob at some point. And the only way you get better is by continuing to work at it, so... Well, some people may have certain, ability kind of built in. Even the pros that, that seems to come naturally to will still take their time to, go over every little detail and, you know, take time to really perfect their craft. Let's use, let's go to Magic the Gathering as an example, just to switch gears to something a little bit different. But you look at some of the top players in the world, you know, tournament scene-wise. Like, I'll use Reed Duke as an example because he's a friend of mine. He, even though he's obviously very good at the game, very good, easy to, you know, very talented at picking up little things here and there, every time he's getting ready for a tournament, he will spend the entire week play testing his deck over and over and over again until he is positive he knows it inside and out, figuring out any little things from the metagame he's going to need to you know, piece out, to you know, be able to react to other people's decks, try to figure out what surprise cards other people might be running that aren't part of the current metagame that might be, you know, making their way in there that he's not ready for. And that same general principle applies to painting. You know, it's no matter how good you are, no matter how experienced you are, you still got to take the time to put the work in, and you can always find room for improvement. So, if nothing else, that's the big thing I'd like for anybody who's watching this this stream to take away. It's have fun with it, take your time, don't get too discouraged with yourself, because we all have to start somewhere. And that goes, you know, for me as well as everyone else. So I should be patient. Absolutely. Be patient. Understand that progress takes time, both in terms of working on the whatever miniature you're currently painting, and in terms of just your overall progress. You know, the stuff that you paint 3 months from now is going to look better than the stuff you're doing now. And while you're working on that Lizardman, you know, maybe, you know, don't expect to get it done in like 20 minutes, 45 minutes, or whatever. You know, be ready to suddenly realize that maybe the Bad Moon Loonshrine you're painting is going to take you, you know, 5 or 6 streams over the course of an entire month instead of just, you know, 2 like you originally said you were going to be doing when you first started painting this on stream. Not that I know anyone specifically who was, you know, doing that or anything, who may be painting a Bad Moon Loonshrine right now on this stream. You can always repaint. You know, yeah, you can always go back, you know, apply some paint thinner to it, you know, douse it in, you know, some paint remover and start over from scratch. Yes, it's going to be a lot more work to kind of go on, but another thing you can do is kind of go back and just do little touch-ups here and there with layer paints, with just little bits of your base coats. At some point, I plan on going back to my my Corvus Cabal warriors and putting some of the Agrellan, was it Agrellan Badlands I think I was using for the bases on the later ones. And I'll, you know, repaint the bases with those instead of the cruddy just Eondon yellow paint that I was using beforehand. So yeah, it just always remember it is when you add oh, absolutely, the washes and the shades really can add a lot to it. The nice thing about the shades, and it's something that also kind of comes into play with the contrast paints like I'm using here, is that once you apply it over something, it just gets into the little crevices and emphasizes all those little folds where the light doesn't hit. So it gives the effect of adding further shadow instead of just the actual shadows that inevitably fall on your piece when you have it under light. When I was doing the Katan Shard of the Void Dragon, I know I keep coming back to that one, but I like using it as an example because I am very proud of the way it came out. But when I was doing the Katan Shard of the Void Dragon, after I had, you know, put the base coat, you know, silvery blue paint for his body, I went back and I put Nuln Oil as a shade over it. And what it did was it darkened the main parts of it a little bit, but the bigger thing that it did is that it got into those little crevices and really emphasized, you know, the musculature, the creases between his fingers and toes. It really just made it pop. And even as you can see with this Bad Moon Loonshrine I've been working on, just the more colors, the more other parts I've added to it, the more the rest of it really just looks better in comparison. So always remember, it's going to sound, you know, kind of reductive and simple, but it's not done until it's done. And while it's in progress, it's going to look, you know, incomplete and not great because you haven't finished putting all the stuff on it that's really going to make those extra bits stand out and sing. And I am no expert at this by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, like I was saying before, the Sabine Wren that I had painted for the store's painting contest came in second to last. And the person who came in last place, okay, no, I'll flat out say, I said I wasn't going to say it earlier. The person who came in last place was painting with a broken hand. So she had an immense handicap going against her into it. So I am far from being an expert even among the customer base at the store. But I do this because it's something I enjoy, and as the more I work on things, the better and better I get, and I can see that progress. If you look at the first Corvus Cabal Warrior I did compared to the, okay, not the latest one, she came out pretty terribly, but the second to last one I did, which was the Shrike Talon, the one with the big wings that were like to the side, it's like mid-leap. It's night and day. The Shrike Talon looks leagues better than the first one I ever did. So definitely don't get discouraged as you're painting your stuff. Remember that, you know, all of this takes time and will, you know, as you do more, as you add more techniques to what you're doing, will come out a lot better in the end. Okay, so let's go back to the Magos Purple for that one little mushroom, or the other mushroom that I realized I had forgotten. I keep coming across more of these guys that I missed. And there's still little bits where it's like, okay, I clearly got too much of the brown on this part here, but when I get to the layers later on, I'll be able to go back in there and, you know, kind of cover them up and make sure they're properly fully painted. Now the question is, where on earth was that other one that I just noticed I'd missed? So the hunt begins. Okay, it's got to be on the other side. So where was it? This is going to bother me a lot, because I know I saw it earlier. There's one little bit, but that's not the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, when I come back later on with like some of the white washes, I'll be able to go over the grayer stalks and make those a lot nicer. Phooey. Now I've lost track of the other one that I thought I saw earlier, so it's two now that I've got to find. Okay, now I definitely got those. Nope, that whole stack is done properly. But, you know, yet another reason I definitely want to come back again later with the... There it is. There they are. Okay. That's the bigger ones. Then I just got to go back and find the other small one that I missed. That I just found and then lost immediately afterwards. Here we go. Okay, much better. So I knew they were there somewhere. Now I just gotta go find the other one that I missed part of. It was one that I definitely got, like, half of it, but then the other... There we are. Okay, it wasn't half. It was one that's, covered up by the stalks on the other side, but there's a little bit of the mushroom on that side. Okay, cool. There we go. That's it for the Magos Purple. Again, I might come back to it again next time and put another layer, depending on how dark the rest of this dries overnight. So, let's switch over then to the Shaiish Purple, which I'm going to use for the flatter mushrooms as well as the stuff that's kind of dangling in that little cave section. Oh, goodness gracious, and I really should wrap up, because my back's starting to bother me, and my nose is running like hell. Alrighty. Here we go. And this one I do have to be careful with, because I know I've mentioned this before, the Shaiish Purple is very dark. So I want to make sure I don't get it on any other pieces where it's not supposed to go. And I am catching myself holding my breath now. I've been good. I haven't been holding my breath with any of the other pieces I've painted today. Well, not other pieces, but other parts of the shrine that I painted today. So I am improving. That was just the first time I hadn't actually been holding my breath. And I am good at catching myself and noticing when I do, so you won't have me passing out on stream, no matter how entertaining that might be for everybody watching. Particularly if I have my bedroom door open and Vivi decides to walk in and start walking over my unconscious body. You'll just see the top of my head on the desk, and then a little black cat just lying down on it and sleeping. There we go. And it looks like the rest of the flat parts are just on this side here. So let's get those taken care of. And I'm just going to focus on the top parts. I want the underside, even though there aren't stalks on these like there are on the other mushrooms, I want those to maintain their kind of whitish gray look. Probably should have taken a little of the paint off there before starting on that one, but I can always go and keep dipping back into this instead of to the paint pot when I want to go to the other ones. So always go and wick some more of this stuff off if need be. Just like that. I still have plenty of paint to get to these little bits here on the side that I'm doing, while keeping that one that I put a little too much paint on still coated and getting some of that excess off of it so it doesn't look like a mess. I can also go back and just get a little more on the top there, make it look a little more smooth. Like I said before, the big thing to remember one of the big things to remember, I keep telling you big things to remember, but one of the things to remember when it comes to the contrast paints is that your brush strokes are going to be extremely visible. So it's something to keep in mind, something to be careful of. Paint the wall mushrooms orange, looks great. Well, the flat ones I'm going to give kind of an orangish, wash to. So that'll make those kind of stand out a bit. The other ones are going to get kind of a lighter, like maybe a yellowish overlay, so they'll be a bit more, they'll stand out a bit more that way. Next we have the Dangling Fungus. I'm just going to do a couple little pieces here and there in the Shaiish purple. So I have a mixture of purples and whites here. You know what? I think I'm just going to do the entirety of the dangly bits in the Shaiish. Allow the contrast to do its own thing with finding little nooks and crannies to darken, and the parts that stay out a bit more to keep light. Since I already put some of the Apothecary White in there, that should come through a little bit as well underneath in the parts where the Shaiish purple is lighter. And again, I'll be going through this with some layers next time. And don't worry, there'll be plenty of days of layer streams because there's a lot of ground to cover. And we have to be a lot more careful with those. Been a little reckless with the contrast paints so far. But when we get to the layers, we're going to make sure it's really, really careful. And who knows, maybe next time I won't even get to the layers. I'll still be going through and just catching a couple of little pieces here and there, going back to the contrast just to make sure my base coat's all complete before I get to that. We will see soon enough. But I think that is going to be a good place to wrap things up for today. So let me just quickly clean my brushes, and then I will hold this up so you can get a better look at everything we've accomplished so far as we head into our, wrapping up our third hour of this. This way I can get up and stretch a bit and take some Advil for my back. Where's the cap? There we go. Okay. And with that, our base coat is mostly done. So you can definitely see how the skulls there really stand out as kind of a creepy dark yellow thanks to the skeleton horde, and again very much so with the that dude up there in the cage. And yeah, next time I'll probably go through and just double check the base coats with the contrasts, and then we'll start moving on to the washes. So with that, I'm going to leave you for now. This evening, Eastern Standard Time, I'll probably be back on. I might do a little messing around with Magic Arena. Otherwise, if you're following us, if you're not following us, please follow us. And if you are following us, you'll get notifications next time I go live. And you're always welcome to come join me. I appreciate everybody that was chatting today. Minecraft Noob, Dr. Red, Flame Wolf. Thanks again to Dr. Red for all the assistance he's given me in getting all this stuff set up. If you get a chance during the week, check out his stream. He streams Fallout 76. His channel is dr_red_md. You know what? Let me type that into the chat, and then it'll pop up on the screen for a little bit. Actually, I can do actual links here. So if you want to check out Dr. Red's channel, that's his channel there, Dr. Red MD. You can also check out my buddy my buddy Fate. Forget I said his actual name. He is going to be streaming some videos today for Super Animal Royale, which is a battle royale game with the cutesy animal characters. His name is F8_GG. For good game. I'm not going to type it out because I don't like the way it looks when it's typed out. Just trust me on that one. But you can check out his channel. He's got a tournament going on today that's starting in about half an hour. Obviously, if you were watching this as a replay on Facebook or YouTube, that's not going to be the case. So I'm going to get some pictures of this later on once it dries a bit more and we see exactly where the paints stand once they've dried. As far as just our in-progress thing, you can find those pictures up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ToyWizCollectibles, or up on our Twitter, twitter.com/ToyWizStore. And can you tell I'm getting tired? Or on our Instagram, instagram.com/ToyWizStore. and you can watch replays of this here on Twitch for up to 2 weeks, and then we also post them on our Facebook page or on youtube.com/ToyWiz. Thank you all again very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed what we've done so far. I can't wait to do even more of the Bad Moon Loonshrine and really get... I mean, it's looking pretty solid so far. It definitely is a little rough in some places, but we're definitely off to a pretty... I'd say we're off to a pretty good start. And as we, as I get some of the layers on there, it'll, you know, pop even more, and we'll continue that next time. We'll see how I'm feeling tomorrow. Maybe I'll pop back in and continue doing some then. Otherwise, I'll be back next Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, until I feel like finishing, and I will see you then. Take care now. Bye-bye.